What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I am joined by two of the greats in this industry, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we this week?
Excited. I mean, just I say it every single week. I'm kind of running out of ways to say it, but it's recording day, and that's the best time of the week because I get to talk to two of the best people I know in this world in general, and also when it comes to talking sports. These are my boys right here. I always love talking with you guys. And I'm happy for another episode.
I'm doing good. We got big games today. I'm excited for that. And Patrick Mahomes is gonna show everybody why he's the king once again.
You're right. There is a big game on TV this week. For all of the listeners listening, we are recording on Thursday, and tonight is the Chiefs versus the Chargers, and it's going to be a banger. It's going to be a banger. A couple injuries. I think Juju Smith-Schuster for the Chiefs. I don't know if he's playing. I think Keenan Allen is also out for the Chargers. But yeah, massive game regardless. Mahomes versus Justin Herbert. Two of the top five quarterbacks in the NFL. You can make the argument top three possibly. Um,
Yikes.
what was that? Did you say yikes?
Yeah, I
Yep.
think so.
We got a Herbert hater here.
That was a
Uh,
crazy hot take.
well. Dame picked the Chargers for this week, so it's
No, I didn't.
yes,
No,
you
you
did. Well,
just
yes, you did originally. Yes, you did originally.
Yeah,
Per the
because I thought
graphic.
they were home.
Okay, that sounds like you a problem.
Dame, to be fair, we both got screwed over because one of my picks didn't get changed either, so we're in the same
Wait,
boat.
what pick?
The Lions game.
You wanted to change the Lions pick?
Yeah. It's look, we this doesn't need to be handled here. We're good. We keep what we have.
Nah, we're blaming Chris.
All right, you know what? You guys do the fucking graphics then, scumbags. Whatever. But yeah, look, this week, pretty decent week. All right, with the return of the NHL news, not necessarily news, but Jurg will go through a rundown of divisions in NHL. He'll be doing a week by week series here where he talks about each division in the NHL, who he thinks on the come up, who he thinks is on the down slide, who's a dark horse. I'm gonna let the Prince of the Ice Prince handle it. So yeah, we got some NHL talk this week. Then we're gonna talk about, we're gonna review Week 1 of the NFL. I think we had a pretty eventful Week 1. Well, just football's back in general, so we're just happy. But we're gonna talk about some notable games, some notable results, of course. And then we're going to finish off with a brief but new segment where we just each give our best performer of the week in the NFL. So each week, we're going to give our best performer, and then we're going to give. Well, I mean, we decided to go with this name because it's funny, but we're going to go with the best performer and then the dud of the week, which is going to go to either a player or coach, no matter who.
or
Uh,
both.
yeah, or both. And in that title, we decided to give the title of the not so great performer of the week, the clown of the week. So he gets the clown shoes. One person gets the crown. One person gets the clown shoes. We'll possibly be making graphics for this on the gram. So best performer of the week, not so best performer of the week, and the not so best performer of the week gets the title of the clown. And we're all clowns in this podcast, so it's appropriate that we gave it this title. And yeah, but we'll end off with that. But for now, we start off with the Ice Prince. Jurg, NHL stuff. Talk to us. What do you got for us?
Yes, of course, boys. The NHL season is rapidly approaching. It begins October 7th with the global series. The San Jose Sharks are going to be a big factor in that they are playing the opening game of the regular season in Prague, actually, with them. And it's going to be them and the Nashville Predators, them beginning the regular season there. And then in North America, everything begins on October 11th, where the New York Rangers will host the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Colorado Avalanche uh, will be in action. Oh, actually, no, excuse me. October 11th will be Vegas Golden Knights and LA Kings, actually, while Colorado is actually playing the next night, October 12th. Also, in the October 12th doubleheader, we got the Boston Bruins against the Washington Capitals. Big games only when it comes to starting the regular season, and especially now that TNT and, of course, ESPN, year 2 of those television contracts, it's looking good, boys. But I've given my props to those two organizations for now having the NHL broadcasting rights before. But like Chris said, I'm here to basically do a division preview. Going to go week by week, division by division, for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's way too much to even try to summarize everything in one singular episode. I think hockey would just be its own episode if we really went to all four at once. So I'm doing one at a time here on a week by week basis. Hopeful for guests to share in the fun in future weeks. But it's just me for this one. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing when it comes to the listening audience. in regards to that. Because like Chris said, we're a bunch of clowns, and who is the biggest clown / court jester of them all? That's your boy right here. But irregardless, when it comes to the ice, I like to think I have a good idea, and I get upgraded to Ice Prince as well from Court Jester, so I'm happy about that. Let's get down to business. Let's not waste any more time. We begin the division previews here on the Somewhat Sports Podcast for the NHL in this upcoming season with the Metropolitan division. Interesting division to say the least. Had 4 playoff teams in it last year. Has 5 potential teams that could maybe make the playoffs. And if you're just going based off of talent on paper, of course, we'll get to those teams in a moment. I'm going to go in kind of reverse order from what last season was. So based off of last season's standings, I'm going to go from bottom to top in terms of the team to talk about. This is not necessarily my predictions. I'm more so leaning towards saving my predictions to the end because even myself, we're about a month out still until the season. Actually, even less than that at this point. Still need to do a little bit of homework, a little bit of time here because a lot needs to go into picking the playoff teams. Gotta try to be as right as I can be. Gotta show that it's not just the NFL that I know about predicting. That's the NHL as well. Then that being said, it's it comes and goes when it comes to the predicting, to say the least. But let's start with the Metropolitan division. Let's start with the Philadelphia Flyers, who of course they finished last in the division last year, and my God, this team is a dumpster fire. This for a team that has pretty good talent on it, for a organization that has some pieces that I really like, they have just underperformed ever since the COVID bubble, where they made it to the second round. They lost in a game 7. The future looked bright, and now it's back to back just pure underperforming seasons for this team. So their idea was to bring in John Tortorella, a very notorious coach in NHL circles. If anyone is an NHL fan that listens to this, I just say his name and people shiver in fear of the potential that he could have been hired to their team. But it's the Flyers fans who are quote unquote lucky to get Tortorella on their team. John Tortorella is very much a coach who is a my way or the highway type of guy. He's a very discipline heavy guy who, for all intents and purposes, and I will give him his credit, he can get the best out of his players, especially when it comes to veteran rosters. And if there is one good thing about his hire to the Flyers, it is that they are a veteran roster. There are veterans on this team that are valuable. There's a guy in Cam Atkinson who he actually coached previously with Columbus. So you got a guy who's familiar with him there. You have veterans on this team such as Hayes. You have James Van Riemsdyk. You have Travis Konechny. So those are 3 very good forwards, especially Konechny having the defensive potential. Of course, when he's healthy, Sean Couturier being a big part of this team. Hopefully he's able to be healthy because he's like I said, an important piece of Selke Trophy nominee when healthy. And I think him, if he's able to get back in the lineup on day one, hopefully, I'm not sure what his prognosis is. I'd have to double check on that. But if he can, get in the lineup early for this team, I think that would be big. He would be a weapon, to say the least. John Tortorella would love using him to lead the penalty kill. You have good defensemen. I'm actually, relatively speaking, a fan of at least the top 2 defensemen on this team, and Ivan Provorov and Travis Sanheim. Big Travis Sanheim fan. Really hope that he could have a big season for this team. And of course, I'm a fan of Carter Hart, the young goalie that's on this team that I feel has been, put in a bad spot the last couple of years. I'm very hopeful that he can have a good year. He was like the top prospect a couple years back, and a combination of things, the main one being the Flyers management with Chuck Fletcher just being absolute buffoons when it comes to the roster construction, especially on the blue line. I said I like 2 of the defensemen on this team. There's 4 other defensemen on the team to build a blue line core. I'm not the biggest fan of the rest of it otherwise, as well as, other pieces in the lineup. I'm just not that big of a fan of Tortorella. He really is good at getting the most out of these guys, or out of guys in general. I think he could get a good chunk out of a few of these guys, especially Carter Hart, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Like I said, this is just based off of last season. It's not my prediction this year, but if I had, one of the few things I'm relatively confident in, I just don't think the Flyers are a playoff team this season. So sorry, Philly, you're going to have to look into next season, 2023 to 2024, for any hope of returning to the dance when it comes to making the playoffs, because it's not looking good this year. Next team up from the standings last year, New Jersey Devils. Kind of a quiet offseason, relatively speaking, for New Jersey, and that's the case with a couple of teams in this division. The main thing with the Devils was the fact that they added former Stanley Cup champion from the Tampa Bay Lightning, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion in Andre Palat. That was a great signing, honestly. May look a little bit rough with the contract in the later years, but I think Palat is an amazing veteran clutch performer in the playoffs. He has a number of game-winning goals from Tampa Bay's playoff runs, especially the back-to-back Cup victories and making it back to the Stanley Cup final for a third year in a row. What they also did was that they acquired Vitek Vanacek from the Washington Capitals in a trade and then signed him to a 3-year deal. Mackenzie Blackwood, the former goalie to be on that team, has really struggled the last couple of years. Maybe him being the backup is better for him to get his career back on track, and Vanacek can be there. I think that's a pretty solid 1-2 punch, relatively speaking. But the big thing for me with this team is how is the defense going to perform? I actually like the forward core behind their top two centers in Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. I just think health is the number one thing for both of those guys. Jack Hughes has had injury issues the last 2 seasons. Especially last year was tragic because he was really looking good early in the season. As a Chicago Blackhawk fan, I can tell you, he made my Blackhawks suffer early in the regular season when we faced off. So this health to me is the biggest thing when it comes to that forward core. In regards to the blue line, I just think overall performance is going to be big. Dougie Hamilton, only 30 points last season. Not that great. You need a little bit more out of him. If the other defensemen on this team can perform as well, I think that'll only be better. For me, what's interesting is to see if the number 2 overall pick, Simon Nemec, is going to end up playing for the team this season. It's always interesting to me when it comes to the last couple years with top overall picks and how quickly do they play. It's usually a tradition where they will play early. I want to say Nemec is probably on pace to start with the team for the season. But there is also still that grace period where it's, I believe, 9 games before they decide to have to burn up the first year of his entry-level contract. I believe that is an option, ultimately speaking, in regards to that. If not, he could just spend time in the minors this season, getting used more to the North American style of play. But I think if he impresses early on in camp, which I believe NHL rookie camps, if they haven't started, they are starting soon. I think if he impresses Devils brass early enough, I think he'll get a spot. The Devils have been a team for a couple years now. Like I'm sure you guys like. I'm sure both of you will think of a team in the NBA or the NFL here, but for a couple years, people have wanted the Devils to take that next step. They're always a team that people have on the list of teams to take a step in the following season, and it just hasn't happened yet with this team. I think there are pieces there. Will they take that next step? I don't know. I think there are a lot of factors that could hold them back, but at the same time, there is the potential there. So I would keep an eye out on the Devils this season. I think there is a lot to look forward to there. Going up in the standings, the team that made the most shocking signing of the offseason when they inked Johnny Gaudreau to a 7-year, $68.25 million contract was the Columbus Blue Jackets. Surprising everyone, to say the very least. I spoke about that on this pod a while back when we talked NHL free agency. It was a shocker that Columbus was able to get him, especially when, ironically, the two teams I just talked about, the Flyers and the Devils, were seen as the two favorites to take him away in free agency. But Columbus swooped him and got him. After that, a days, a week later, they inked Patrick Laine to a 4-year deal. This is a very interesting team in Columbus. I think there's a good mix of veteran forwards and youth on this team. You have Gaudreau and Laine, like I said. You have Jakub Voracek, who had a very good year last year, actually underrated. And you have Jack Roslovic, who I think should be a number 2 center. He is kind of the de facto number 1 on this team, but you're hoping for a little bit of development in these prospects, and one day, maybe a year or two down the line, Roslovic can be the number 2 center he should be, and one of these young guys can move up to the number 1 spot. Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger being the top 2 names on this team in terms of young guys who could maybe be the number 1 center one day. I'm a little iffy in regards to that in who could take it. I think Ken Johnson showed a little bit of the ability to play the wing, so maybe does that mean Sillinger is the guy to groom to eventually be that number 1 center? Who knows? But a big thing, very hopeful for the Blue Jackets that both those guys can play and play well at the NHL level on a more consistent basis this year, especially Ken Johnson. But he went back to college and then played late in the regular season. That's actually a very standard thing that happens when it comes to NHL draft picks who go to college. College season ends much earlier, and guys get to play a little bit at the end of a season before going into next year. Similar situation with Owen Power and the Buffalo Sabres, and Matty Beniers and the Seattle Kraken. Chris's Seattle Kraken, by the way, which will be in a later episode, later division to be reviewed. With Columbus, it's interesting. Like, this is the definition of a scrappy team. If you catch them on a really good night for them or a bad night for yourself, they could definitely get the win. Elvis Merzlikins has proven himself. He got a big contract from them a while back. Jonas Korpisalo is a decent backup. A decent defensive core here with Zach Werenski being the top blue liner here. Adam Boqvist, who I think is really going to have a good second year with Columbus. Once again, me being a Chicago fan, I'm still hurt about the fact that we had to trade him away, but to each his own, and terrible Chicago management in the past aside. As well as that, you have Gavrikov and Jake Bean, who are both talented. I think Columbus is a great scrappy team. It wouldn't surprise me if for some reason they are in the playoff picture towards the end of the year. Do they make it? I'm not necessarily certain. I don't think it's there for them this season, but for years now, even when it looked like they're totally out of it, they find a way to still be in the playoff picture and going in the last month of the season. If that's the case here, wouldn't surprise me. That's just how the Columbus Blue Jackets are. Speaking of being in the playoff picture towards the end of the season, this team tried to make a run at the end of last year before really ultimately falling well short of it. But the New York Islanders, very weird offseason for this team, to say the least. Without a doubt, the team that made the least amount of moves for any team in the division. They didn't really add anyone notable aside from a trade where they traded their first round pick in this past draft to the Montreal Canadiens for Alexander Romanov. I think that was a pretty good deal. I like Romanov personally. They also inked him to I believe it was just a 3-year extension. I like him. I think he's a solid blue liner to add into the top four. That's already very talented. You have offensive talents like in Dobson and Pulak, and then a very good penalty killing leader in Pelech. I think the defense per usual is going to be solid for the Islanders, as well as the tandem of Ilya Sorokin and Varlamov. Sorokin most likely being the number one guy going into this season. The last couple of years, it was Varlamov and Sorokin, but Sorokin really taking that step last season when Varlamov, I don't think he was just benched. I want to say he was hurt. And then Sorokin took the number one job and ran with it. He is going to be the guy going forward for this team in terms of, how their success will be based in terms of defense and play in net. But the number one thing for this Islanders team is going to be the offense. Can new head coach Lane Lambert, who was an assistant coach for them the last couple of years under former coach Barry Trotz, who was surprisingly fired in the offseason, Ken Lambert get this offense going? The biggest thing when it came to the Islanders last season, and yes, to be fair, they did start, I forget the exact number, I want to say it was at least the first 10, 11 games of the season on the road last year because the new arena for them out in Queens was being built. Beautiful arena, by the way. Haven't personally been to it, but I've seen the outside, and I have a friend who's gone to plenty of games. It's a beautiful arena. I do recommend going to it for sure in Elmont. I think there is the ability for this team to tap in offensively. You have Matthew Barzal, who should really be having like 70, 80 point seasons with the talent he has. You have Anders Lee, who's been a 40 goal scorer before, probably not that anymore, but at least 25 to 30. You have decent veterans there, and Kyle Palmieri and Bailey, who can both get you 40 to 50 points in a given season. This team has the talent, but it was clear last year offensively they were supremely lacking. Barry Trotz has never been an offensive guy, but for them to have started out as bad as they were, to have been that sluggish, to have had that many issues, it wasn't right, especially coming off back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals appearances for this team. Last season was a shock to say the very least. But like I said, the firing of Trotz was the biggest shock of them all. I still don't understand it. I think it was the wrong call. If Lambert can get the offense going, then maybe that would fix it. But if this team falls flat again this season, I think you got to ask a lot of questions, especially with Matthew Barzal. He's going into, this is the last year of his deal. He's going into an RFA year, so he's going to be restricted free agents, which gives the Islanders some advantage. But as we saw this year with Kachuk and the Calgary Flames, even being an RFA doesn't necessarily save you from potentially losing your player. So that'll be interesting to see how that situation out with the Islanders ends up going. Should they be a playoff caliber team this year? Yes, they should on paper. Again, the talent's there. This team has the experience. But again, the offense is a big concern. Maybe a more even schedule will be in their favor now. It should in theory. But that's wait and see in its own right as well. So the verdict is very still to be determined when it comes to this thing. I'm going to put these two teams together next up because, they finished third and fourth last year. I forget how much they were separated by. It wasn't by too big of a margin. The Pittsburgh Penguins and the Washington Capitals, this is like the third or fourth straight year in a row for both teams where the story is simple. You have an aging superstar who's a Hall of Famer on their teams with Sidney Crosby with Pittsburgh and Alexander Ovechkin in Washington. And they're just trying to do all they can to really surround those guys with the talent possible to go get back there. The Washington Capitals have not won a playoff series ever since they won the Stanley Cup years back in 2018. And the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think it's the same thing. I actually don't think they've won a first round series since they last won the Cup. They made it to the second round the year after their repeat. But ever since that, I don't think they made it. So it's been a while since both these teams got out of the first round, but they have been consistently making the playoffs. And for both sides, definitely, took that to heart this offseason to make moves. In Washington, they added solid depth pieces in Dylan Strome and Connor Brown, who I think both of them, especially Strome, will make a difference, especially offensively. I think Dylan Strome has a chance to be the real second line center on this team, which would be big. But the big thing for the Washington Capitals was a complete reset on the goalie situation. They got Charlie Lindgren to be the backup, and they got Darcy Kemper from the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. They signed him away on a 5-year deal worth $26.5 million. Solid for them overall solid for the Avs, I should say, overall last season. The regular season, he had just over 2.5 goals against average with a 92 save percentage. So Darcy Kemper, for all intents and purposes, was good, and he really stepped up in the Stanley Cup final when it came to the Avs Lightning series. A big reason why they won was because Darcy Kemper, he played his best hockey at the right time, and they're going to need that, especially with the complete inconsistencies that they've seen in net the last couple of years. Like I mentioned, they traded Vitek Vanacek to the Devils, and they just let Ilya Samsonov, their former highly touted prospect, go in free agency this past year. It'll be interesting to see if they can continue to do what they've done for the last couple of years and continue to shock us in terms of making the playoffs. The same thing could be said with the Pittsburgh Penguins. They kept two of the mainstays of this team for a long time in Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. Both of them played really well last season. 68 points for Letang, 42 points for Malkin in just 41 games. I think it was mainly the first half of the season he missed, came back 42 points in 41 games. That's outstanding. He's still a great offensive player, and I like Malkin's deal more because it's just 4 years. Letang giving him 6 years, I was very iffy on. But if that's what it had to take, I guess that's what it had to take. Another trio of signings that they made in terms of guys, other veterans, and Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, and Kasperi Kapanen. Iffy on those, especially Raquel and especially Raquel and Rust. I don't like giving 30-year-olds north of $4.5 when they're not all-star/superstar caliber players. Not that big of a fan of it, so we'll see if those contracts bite the Penguins or if those guys continue to play at a high level. But for me, the big thing with the Penguins, as opposed to maybe some of the other teams I've talked about, is going to be the performance of the defense and the goalie. On the blue line, they added some pieces in the offseason. They traded for Jeff Petrie, which was an amazing deal. They traded for Ty Smith, which I actually like. They got rid of John Marino. They actually sent it to the Devils, John Marino, for Ty Smith from them. I actually like Ty Smith a lot. A lot of people were not a fan of the deal. He's a much cheaper version of Marino, and I think he could be just as good, if not better. So I really like that deal for the Penguins. I think they did a solid job with fixing up the blue line a little bit. I think there's the potential there for them to perform. But it's all about the play. And that Tristan Jarry shocked everyone with his performance last season. 2.42 goals against in the regular season and a save percentage just under 920 in throughout the course of the year. Massive, 180 from what he was the previous season, which was solid in the regular season, but did not perform in the playoffs. And this year, he was actually hurt going into the playoffs. He didn't see time in net until the final game of that Rangers-Penguins series, Game 7, and that went to OT. So at the end of the day, maybe could the Penguins have moved past the Rangers if Jarry was healthy? Who knows? And this is going to be a big year for Jarry to prove himself for this team. He's on a contract year. How he performs is going to be the difference between his payday next offseason, but also what the Penguins could do. I believe both the Penguins and the Capitals have a streak going, especially the Penguins. They've made the playoffs, I want to say, at least 11 years in a row now or so. That streak, I think, more than any of the last couple of years, could potentially be on the line, depending on the step backs that they may take versus the step forwards that teams below them could take. So definitely, with the Penguins and the Capitals, these are two old teams, again, with two Hall of Fame talents. Can they make one more run at it? That's the storyline with those squads going forward. Last two teams here to talk about. First, of course, the team that made the Eastern Conference Finals in the New York Rangers. Captured the hearts and souls of, New York sports fans that needed a team to actually have playoff success, because a lot of them haven't, including some of the teams that are rooted for on this podcast. The Rangers, like I said, making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, surviving Game 7s in Round 1 and Round 2 to make it before losing to the former two-time back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning, ultimately in Game 6. And the thing with the Rangers, I didn't like their offseason. And the reason why I didn't like it, kind of to an extent, not their own fault, because when you make a deep playoff run, guys want to get paid and they're going to take advantage of their performances. And for this team, you knew they were going to lose a couple pieces. They lost quite a few. They lost Ryan Strome in free agency. I believe he went to Anaheim, as well as Frank Vetrano. I believe both of them, headed out west to Anaheim, California to join the Ducks. Andrew Kopp went to the Detroit Red Wings. That was big. And they traded their former backup Alexander Georgiev to the Colorado Avalanche. To make up for it, they signed Vincent Trocheck away from the Carolina Hurricanes to be their new second-line center, and they got Yaroslav Halak actually to be their new backup as well. Veteran backup right there with plenty of NHL experience. The big thing for me, the two key factors to me for the Rangers going into needing a repeat this season of what last year was for them is a lot of young players need to step up. And trusting young players to step up for your team is very much a hearsay basis. There's Capo Caco, who just hasn't had a big regular season yet, looked decent in the playoffs, but he randomly got benched towards the end of their playoff run. You have Julien Gauthier, who good player, 1 year deal. Can he perform in the regular season? A couple guys on defense, Braden Schneider, Libor Hayek. A lot of guys that need to step up on the blue line. Zachary Jones as well. 3 young players that you hope can carve out a role for themselves on the Rangers. And finally, to me, Alexis Lafreniere is a guy similar to Capo, even though he's played a lot better in the regular season. Need that big year from him. Capo Caco is a former second overall pick. Alexis Lafreniere is a former first overall pick. You need those guys to play like their draft stock and have big seasons for you. In part, you need that to happen in terms of how they're put in the lineup, and it'll be interesting to see if Gerard Gallant gives those guys more opportunities in the top two forward lines, where you have the likes of Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, as well as on defense you have an Adam Fox to work with. Speaking of those guys who I just mentioned, I'll just go to the next point. I need more offensive consistency from the Rangers. You really saw what happened at the end of their playoff run, but even a little bit in the second round against Carolina, of what happens if the offense isn't performing, and it's all on Igor Shesterkin, the defending Vezina Trophy winner, to have to bail them out. And he did that a lot last season with a 2.06 goals against and a 9.35 save percentage. He was the best goalie in the regular season, bar none, when it came to it. But he was out. I don't even want to say he was outplayed in the playoffs. It's just this team did not step up enough in that second round. And for Rangers fans, there's a little bit of PTSD because, the former king of New York, Henrik Lundqvist, plenty of playoff runs ending because the New York Rangers were unable to support their franchise goalie back then. And it looked a little bit of the same last season. I'm really concerned because I think the talent-wise, the Rangers should be a top 2 team in this division, and I think they ultimately will be. But if the offense is not able to be as consistent, or it cannot improve their consistency, I think it could be an earlier playoff exit than what we'd expect from this team. The Penguins really challenged them last season, and looking back, hindsight 2020, I think that showed a lot more cracks in them other than, yes, the Rangers showed great resolve and all that because they had to come down 3-1 in that series. There's a reason they were down 3-1 because there were a lot of mistakes that if it was a healthy Penguins team, I don't think the Rangers make the conference finals run that they have. So Rangers, not a perfect team, have a lot to fix, a lot of good there. Let me stress that to the New York fans out there and to Chris, who likes cheering for the New York teams. A lot of good. Are the Rangers going to be like a top 5, top 6 team in the league? Yes, they should. Could they win this division? Yes, they should. But do they need to get things in order for them to really be a true threat to me? Yes, they should. And the last team to talk about, the team that won the Metro Division in the regular season last year, they were top team in the division before losing to the Rangers in 7 games in the second round. The Carolina Hurricanes, they didn't really lose a lot for their standards. They just traded Tony DeAngelo to the Philadelphia Flyers, which really I think is more of a net positive than anything. Yes, he scored 51 points, but how do you make up for that? You trade for the likes of Brent Burns, who had 54 points last season, and Max Pacioretty, who only 37 points, but in 39 games played. You add those two guys to forward and defensive cores that include the likes of Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, and Toivu Teravainen on offense, whereas on defense it's Jacob Slavin, Brett Pesce, Ethan Bear, Brady Shea. The Carolina Hurricanes are set for the regular season. And even they don't even need to make a move at the deadline because Pacioretty is going to be out with injury at the start of the season. He's going to come back after the first couple months. He's essentially your trade deadline acquisition when he comes back from the injury. And he's so supremely offensively talented. Maybe not a top 6, maybe not the top line winger anymore, even though you probably would like to see that considering that's where the bulk of the offensive talent is. But if he can find a role in the second and third line, which, you talk about the depth on this team with the likes of getting Paul Stastny, signing Andre Kasha, having Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Martin Nikish, this team is deep. The Carolina Hurricanes are deep. And had they been healthy, again, this is health. Had they been healthy last season in the postseason with Frederik Andersen, dude, they maybe beat the New York Rangers in that second round. That's a big thing to think about. So I think the Carolina Hurricanes are well equipped to make another run. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this team can finally take that next step to go deep in the postseason again, back to the Eastern Conference Finals, which they made, I want to say it was 2018 when the no, hold on, give me a second, boys. Oh, no, 2019, excuse me. I believe that's when they last made the conference finals, in a really surprise run. Couple early round exits, relatively speaking, since. But I think, especially because they beat Boston in the first round last year, had that series with the Rangers, I think this team is battle tested. I think there's something there to like. And I think the Carolina Hurricanes should be a favorite on a lot of people's list to make it far in the postseason. Are they cup contenders? I don't know, because there is that other team in the Eastern Conference that we'll probably get to next week to talk about. But in this division, if I had to guess, I would say it's a pretty safe bet that the Carolina Hurricanes once again win this the Metropolitan Division for the 2022-2023 season. And that concludes this Metro Division preview for the NHL. A lot of teams to go through, of course. Some talented ones there, especially towards the end. And this is going to be the case over the next couple of weeks. We're going to go through each division. We're going to talk about each team. Some will get less time than others, Flyers, and some will definitely get more, obviously, because if you're talented, you're going to get time to be talked about on the podcast. That's just the way the world works. But 1/4 of the NHL division previews, boys, completed.
Beautifully done, as always, Jurg. Beautifully done, my brother. Okay. We move on over to the NFL world, where week 1 has come and gone. Fellas, eventful, very eventful. And there were some eventful results, actually. And we're going to talk about the notable ones, not necessarily everyone, but like the notable ones. I'll go through the ones I think that are notable. We'll each, give our take about the game. And then if I miss something in particular, a game that you guys want to talk about, you guys could just rebound if you want. So I think we should start off with the first game of the season that aired last Thursday. Bills versus Rams. Bills manhandle the Rams 31-10. A result, let me scratch that. Not a result, because I do think some people had the Bills winning. I think it's the way the game played out. I take 2 takeaways from this. First takeaway, the Bills are the team to beat, probably in the NFL. 2, man, oh man, I'm concerned about the Rams. Fellas, we can talk about both of them if you want, but I am concerned about the Rams. And this is coming off our bullish or bearish game where we were all bullish on the Rams repeating. The O-line, tragic from what I saw. Cooper Kupp is always going to do his thing for the Rams, but man, it doesn't hurt to have like an OBJ to take some of the pressure off of him, especially when you're going against the Bills defense. There's rumors that the Rams signed Allen Robinson this offseason, but from this game, I didn't see that. I did not think that Allen Robinson was signed by the Rams because my man was virtually non-existent. Much to the chagrin of fantasy owners. But yeah, we'll talk about the Bills here. Josh Allen is on one, fellas. That defense, especially Von Miller, and maybe it's because like he kind of knows the Rams schemes. Dude, this Bills defense was chef's kiss during this game. Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, the receiving core here, man. When you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, man, this offense and this defense is absurd. And they did it against the Rams, the defending champs. Massive statement game. And I guess obviously we could talk about the games, but does this particular question, does this game say more about the Bills or the Rams? And Dame, let me start off with you. Obviously that question, but what did you make of the game and how it went? Because the first half, I mean, it was a pretty sloppy game in the first half, and it was kind of close. I think it was 10-10 by the half, and then Bills just took over. So, yeah.
I would say it says more about the Rams because they are the defending champions and they just look awful on offense and defense in all aspects. Just quickly on the Bills, I'd just say that we knew what the Bills are going to be. We knew they were going to be a top 2, top 3 team, if not the best team in the league. Josh Allen showed you who he is. 2 picks in the first half, and then comes on, has an amazing half in the second half. Up and down, you never know what you're going to get from him, but he's an amazing quarterback. He showed that in the second half. They have all these weapons with Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Crowder, McKenzie. Their running game was great too. And then, like you mentioned, their defense was elite. I forgot how many sacks. I think they had like 7 sacks or something like that. But I wouldn't say all the sacks. Wouldn't give all the credit to the defense. This comes back to the Rams, and like I mentioned, how it was a very concerning game for them because it all starts with the offensive line to me. I know they lost Andrew Whitworth in the offseason, their left tackle for a few years now. But just losing one lineman shouldn't be why their offensive line looks so bad on Thursday night. They just couldn't get a running game going. They couldn't get any pass protection. Stafford was like getting sacked left and right, getting hit left and right. Couldn't really get his throws off. He was only looking for Cooper Kupp. He didn't even look for Allen Robinson. I don't think it was an Allen Robinson problem because if you look at the film, I don't know if this was open over and over again, but not that I said it, but Stafford kind of prefers certain receivers compared to others. Um, so that's a little concerning as well. I know Sean McVay came out and said that he needs to spread the ball out a lot more, and I agree with that because teams are eventually gonna like hone in on certain receivers on that team, and then once they do that, Matthew Stafford isn't gonna know where to go. So Stafford needs to learn how to spread the ball out to kind of make their offense more efficient. Because once you spread the ball out, that'll open up the running game as well. And once you open up the running game, it'll open up the play action, which is something that the Rams were incredibly successful at last season. So overall, I think this is concerning for the Rams because their offense didn't look good from the passing games to the running games to the offensive line, and their defense didn't look good at all. They couldn't stop Josh Allen running the ball or throwing the ball. So, um, extremely concerning game for Rams, and I'd say it says a lot more about the Rams because they are the defending champs than it does the Bills, who we kind of expected to be one of the top teams in the league.
For me personally, I think this says more about the Bills and just how real of a contender they are for this season. The fact that they were do that to the Rams, I definitely get the point of analyzing everything from the Rams' perspective. But you look at it, yes, they were like I think the thing with teams like the Rams is that we really love to look at the acquisitions made that they made in regards to like a Bobby Wagner and an Allen Robinson, but we don't think about the departures. And I think Andrew Whitworth was a bigger deal than figured. Yes, they did have a succession plan in place, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And Andrew Whitworth was a lot bigger of a deal than I think a lot of people gave credit for. Even at his old age, he was still a very good left tackle, a very formidable part of that offensive line. I think that was the more a bigger thing. Stafford, like the thing with the offensive performance from the Rams is like it didn't necessarily surprise me that Stafford had that game because he had a couple games like that last season. Like this is just who Matthew Stafford is. He's going to have bad games. He's going to throw some picks, and when he's down, he's going to keep trying to throw his way out of the situation. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Yes, this was his life in Detroit for like what 12, 13 years. So it didn't surprise me. Yes, it's a little bit shocking, of course, to see the defending champions get rocked like that in the opening game. But this is just how it works sometimes. Like, yeah, I think we've learned in the NFL, and we always let it sweep us in, but it's very much a game by game, week by week basis. Teams can end up winning the Super Bowl later in the season, but they had a game in the regular season where they lost by 30. You know, that's just how it goes. Is it tough? Yes. I'd be more concerned if this was like week 14, but this is week 1. The Rams will get opportunities to fix this. Again, this is more the Bills looking absolutely outstanding. The run defense looked a lot better than it did last season, which was been a big weakness for this team the last couple of years. Gabe Davis played great next to Stephon Diggs, and it looked like the Bills might have some real offensive depth on that team, which was for me personally a concern in regards to like who was going to be there aside from Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen stepping up offensively. I think it just looked good. Like I think this is more about the Buffalo Bills. We kind of said on this show, and I think a lot of other shows have said it, where it's like the Bills, they're real Super Bowl contenders. That the Super Bowl could be theirs to lose, especially in the AFC. The AFC could be theirs to lose this season. This was a big statement as like, yeah, there's a reason everyone's saying that. I think it was a great victory by them. They go into their week 2 game against Tennessee. We'll see about that. The Rams, tough loss, but you just got to move on from it. They get the perfect game to bounce back against the Atlanta Falcons, a team that, chokes on everything, including a peanut if they had to just
Wow,
eat that.
wow.
Yeah, the Falcons are not good. So perfect game for the Rams. They'll be able to bounce back. I'm not too worried about it. First time ever Sean McVay's been below 500. I'm not concerned.
Yeah, and it will likely not last for a while. All right, next notable game or result rather. Bears. The Chicago Bears 1-0 beat the San Francisco 49ers. Granted George Kittle was not playing, but I'm not going to take away anything from the Bears here because hey man, no one had the Bears winning this. And look, there was generational rain going on. I don't want to hear it though. Guys, this was a bad loss for the 49ers. Not a great showing for Trey Lance, much to the chagrin of Trey Lance fans. Me and Dame know a specific one. No names. But, fellas, I mean, are we concerned? Are we? I mean, I'm assuming, I'm going to predict that you guys state that this loss says more about the 49ers than the Bears, but I do want to give the Bears flowers. And shout out to Justin Fields, man. All-time celebration at the end where they do the slip and slide at the rain towards the end when they won the game. So that was awesome. But I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this result says more about the 49ers. But Jurg, let me start with you. What'd you make of this result rather.
The only generational thing about this game was the rainfall that we got, and not the play from the quarterbacks that those franchises are hoping for. No, I mean, obviously it was rough. I don't think the rain helped either quarterback. It was the thing I've heard the most is that that was a battle of mid quarterbacks. It was a mid off in between those two, and I think even mid is being nice. I know Fields ended up technically winning the game, but he didn't have that good of a day either.
Yeah, he's had a rough start to his career, man.
I know, I'm trying to be nice because I do love Justin Fields, and anyone that has to start their career with Matt Nagy as their boss deserves all the credit in the world when they actually succeed. Trust me, I understand it, but he didn't look that great. Trey Lance, of course, did not look good at all. But everyone was slipping and sliding everywhere. Like, yes, I'm concerned, but I would like to see I don't want to say real game. I would like to see a game with semi-normal conditions before giving like more critical analysis. I will say this: I didn't like. I felt a lot of easy misses were the thing with Lance that could have been avoided. And I think that's one of those things that you can avoid. We kind of talked about it was last week or so on the pod when it came to could teams potentially miss. And I said, while we are all expecting the 49ers to make it, I gave reasons as why they could miss the playoffs. And Trey Lance is potentially, he's one of the reasons. He's not the only reason, but he is one of the reasons if they are going to end up missing the playoffs. Dame kind of alluded to the fact that he thinks it'll be fine. I think, well, in terms of like they still have Jimmy G, again, I think Shanahan and John Lynch and them, there's a little bit of pressure to at least give Lance a shot. So I think Lance is going to have a little bit of a window here. Like he's going to get a grace period to have these kinds of games. I would like to see him complete passes better. Like that's just number one. And there needs to be the connection between him, Debo, and George Kittle. Like that needs to happen. Kittle and Debo did not have good games. They need to that needs to be fixed up here really quick. Have him throw 50 passes per practice, if not more, to both those guys. Because if there's no chemistry between the young quarterback and the top two weapons on the team, that's a problem. And tight ends are supposed to be a young quarterback's best friend too. So at the end of the day, come on now, Trey Lance, don't disappoint us. And when Joe Flacco outperforms you, we have some issues. Let's move on. Let's play better. Let's practice better, and let's do better next week.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can't take much stock into this game because of the weather conditions. Like, this is Trey Lance's first ever career start. Like to start a regular season, I know he started I think a couple games last year when Jimmy G was hurt, but like just starting from week one, he started off the season. And it's just not ideal conditions. Like, of course, they should have won because it is the Bears. But I guess I wouldn't put much stock into on the 49ers side. I just give the Bears credit where they deserve it. They won a great and grind kind of game. Their defense showed up when they needed to. They did what they were supposed to do, and the offense scored when they as much as they possibly needed to do in a game like this to win the game because of what their defense was able to do to the 49ers offense. 49ers offense obviously took a hit with Elijah Mitchell being out now for 2 months, and Kittle didn't even play in this game. So they were kind of missing a couple pieces there. But overall, it's a wait and see for me with the 49ers because I can't really put my stock into it because of the weather conditions. Like they're a team that needs to run the ball. Trey Lance isn't going to go out and throw 40 times a game for 450 yards. He needs to have a clean pocket, be able to run without slipping. His running ability is very important as well, but in these conditions, he really wasn't able to do it. So, it's a wait and see for me with the next couple of weeks how they're going to be. But for the Bears side, Justin Fields, he obviously didn't look great, but he got enough done in order for them to really win this game. And that's what's impressive me on the Bears side. I'm not really going to shit on the 49ers that much.
Right. I for me, Dame, like the biggest thing when it comes to the young quarterbacks, young players in general, is like there's a massive difference between last season. Like you mentioned, he did get a couple starts, but there's a big difference between being a spot starter versus from day one, you got to be the guy now, and teams are going to focus in on you more. And I think Trey Lance just needs to adjust to that. This is something he hasn't had to deal with yet. I think that's going to be a big thing for him.
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of mentioned this in our preseason thing. I think that I thought the 49ers were going to struggle to begin the season anyway. And then eventually, if Trey Lance really doesn't show any signs of improvement or turning around, I think they'll turn to Jimmy G. They're not a team that's rebuilding or have any time to wait. So if Trey Lance, I think they'll give him some leeway, but eventually, if not, they don't even see signs of improvement, I don't think they'll hesitate to turn to Jimmy G.
Next notable game, and man, oh man, was this a game, all right. Steelers-Bengals. Steelers 23, Bengals 20. I think a lot of people were predicting the Bengals would win this. Not me, though. I had the Steelers winning this one, and I was correct. But Man, what a back and forth game, especially with the kicking, man. Yo, the kicking in the NFL this week. Holy shit. Hug your kickers. Hug your kickers was the statement that I read. I don't know from who, but it was probably like a rap report or something. But um guys, clearly this was a I don't know. How would you describe this game? Like a mixed bag of emotions, I guess, for lack of a better term. But look, the Steelers defense showed up, man. Joe Burrow, he had a rough game. I think what 4 picks? No, was it
Yeah, 4 picks.
Jesus Christ? Okay, 4 picks, 1 fumble. But granted, I mean, he was still like for 4 picks. He did have a pretty decent game. He brought them back. Him and Jamar Chase, man, that combo is so lethal. But they had an opportunity to win it. They tied it late in the game. They tied it last minute. Was it? Who blocked it? Was it
Minka
Fitzpatrick?
Fitzpatrick.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was Fitzpatrick that blocked that would have been the game winning field goal kick from McPherson. And then I think in overtime there was just back and forth missed kicks. I don't remember if the I don't remember. Did McPherson miss a field goal in overtime?
Yeah, what happened was so McPherson missed, then Boswell missed, then the Steelers got the Bengals out of field goal range.
Right. Okay, all right, yeah. But look, the Steelers, we got to give credit, man. Mike Tomlin, bro, this man is a wizard, and that defense showed up. Notable thing though, I believe T.J. Watt thought he tore his pec, but it turns out the diagnosis showed that he didn't tore his pec, but he's going to be out 6 weeks, which is a huge blow to their defense. But I mean, still, no surgery needed, which is a huge W for them. But does this result say more about the Bengals or the Steelers? Who do I start? I mean, Dame, what did you think?
I think this says more about the Bengals because specifically Joe Burrow. He had 5 turnovers. I think he had 4 picks and a fumble loss. Um, I know a lot of people were saying that last year's run was like kind of a Cinderella run. You can't expect to repeat that. I was one of them, and I still do believe that. This was kind of embarrassing on their side of it because 5 turnovers just isn't going to cut it. They were lucky this game was even close. Any other game where he has 5 turnovers, including 4 picks, I think one of them was pick six too. The game's not even going to be close. So the fact that the Steelers just sucked that bad that they kept it close is lucky for the Bengals. They're gonna face better opponents going forward. They have the Ravens their division. They have the Browns. They face the Chiefs and the Bills. Like this stuff isn't gonna rock, especially going into the playoffs too. So it's concerning on that side of it. For the Steelers though, kind of like I mentioned, when you force 5 turnovers from a QB, you should be blowing that team out. But I guess when you have Mr. Trubisky as your QB, you have your excuse right there why you're not blowing them out. But Jamar Chase obviously was great. Joe Mixon was great. T. Higgins, I think, left with a concussion. So maybe that kind of hurt Joe Burrow, not having 3 all-star receivers. But overall, I think something to look forward to in the season is Joe Burrow's turnover problems because I think if that continues, it's going to be true what a lot of people said that this team might not even make the playoffs at all.
So for me, this just says that when it comes to Pittsburgh Steelers teams and Mike Tomlin, you literally have to kill him and bury him. You need to see the casket go down for the Steelers to really be out of it. The same thing happened last week in week 1 when they faced the Bills and the Bills are going to hang 30-40 on the Steelers. It's done. And the Steelers won that game. They just do this, and it's kind of annoying. But you have to. It's less annoying now that scumbag Ben Roethlisberger ain't there anymore. But Mike Tomlin, you give all the respect in the world. He's an amazing motivator, and he can get guys really going. So I think that was the big thing. TJ Watt being out is really going to hurt. They did get pass rush otherwise, which I think was a key thing. But how much is that going to continue without TJ Watt in the lineup still? And that offense just really didn't do that much for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they got lucky because their defense shined. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, pick 6, blocked the field goal. What a day for Minkah Fitzpatrick. If he wasn't AFC Defensive Player of the Week, then who the hell was? Because that was very much deserving. For me, what this says about the Bengals is that they still have some things to clean up on the offensive line in terms of getting chemistry. I think, again, with the offensive line, we really don't I think of all the groups in the NFL, I really don't think we understand what goes into making a good offensive line, and I think chemistry is being one of them. It's nice to overhaul the line, but those guys need to get cadences down together. They need to get chemistry, the center being able to line up with the guards. The tackles have to do their thing. there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to a good offensive line. Like there are a lot of moving pieces when it comes to the kicking game. So I think and the punting game as well. So when it comes to that, I think it just shows that the Bengals have a good bit of kinks to work out on a couple different sides of the ball. I'm not concerned overall. Again, yes, 4 interceptions is not ideal, but considering 7 sacks and all the times that Burrow was almost sacked again, like once the Bengals learn how to win and Joe Burrow doesn't nearly get decapitated on a play or two a game, I think that's when you'll really see the Bengals take that true next step. Um, they do need to clean it up and they need to perform a lot better. But and start out stronger, I think, is a big thing. I think even a couple games last year, especially in the playoffs, you had a couple of cases like this where they didn't perform great in the first half, but came back in the second half. I think it needs to be a little bit more consistent. But again, you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase there. T. Higgins being out for an extended period of time will hurt, but you have Tyler Boyd there to pick up the slack. He could potentially be a big piece. You still have Joe Mixon. The Bengals do have the pieces there to potentially, not potentially, they can recover from this. It just takes a little bit of fortitude. We saw some of that from them last year, but it's a new season. We got to see them do it again. To me, it's simple as that. I've not lost the faith I've placed in this team. I think they could still potentially, you know, get back into things. And I did I pick them? No, I don't think I picked them to win the division. We didn't do division winners, but I didn't pick them to win the division, but I think they could still make the playoffs at least as a wild card team. So that's my base expectations for them. They just got to play better, do better.
All right. Next game. Colts versus Texans. This ended up being a tie, actually. So, Jurg, let me stick with you. Does this result say more about the Colts or the Texans? I'm assuming the Colts. But yeah, I mean, could have been worse. They could have lost this, and my God, they were on the verge of losing too. So,
Yeah.
what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it really said to me that maybe Matt Ryan wasn't all we thought he would be for this team because Carson Wentz also played a lot better than him on this past Sunday. So for all the Carson Wentz haters, Chris, Carson Wentz really showed you one. But no, in all seriousness, like this was very concerning that a Houston Texans defense was able to do all of that to an Indianapolis Colts team. I want to say shout out to OJ Howard real quick for the Texans. He had 2 touchdowns. Good for him. Good for him. I like OJ Howard personally. But it really just goes to show that, you know, the Colts still have some work to do. And Matt Ryan, like 32 of 50, 352 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Look, I know Jonathan Taylor already had 31 carries in that game. Like he ended with that. I don't think they're going to win games with Matt Ryan throwing 50 plus times a game. And maybe that was in part because of the pace of play, because you look at the other side of things and Davis Mills had to throw 37 times as well. Like, and again, Houston, you're not going to win with Davis Mills throwing 37 times either. But the point remains where if your quarterback has to get to that number and it's not a game where that number should be that high, I think there's a problem. And I think, again, this is a situation where they have to work some things out. I think Jonathan Taylor needs to get the ball a little bit more. I think the Colts offensive line could have done better because Jonathan Taylor, I think for the most part, Dame, I think will attest to this. First half, we didn't see a lot of him. It was really the second half where Jonathan Taylor popped off and did a lot of the damage to that Houston Texans defense. But ultimately, yeah, the Colts had the opportunities to end up winning this game at the end, and they just weren't able to do it. Simply put, it sucked with the missed field goal, and they killed a lot of time to get down there, and they just ended up missing that field goal, which they were there. I'm not gonna say chicanery isn't the word, but like I said, there's a whole process that goes into the kicking and the punting game, and if one thing is a little bit awry, that could cause a miss. I don't like the fact that they released Rodrigo Blankenship. I think that was a terrible mistake. Specs is one of the better kickers in the league, and props to who's ever going to end up picking him up. I hope the team that picks him up faces the Colts later this season, and Blankenship gets a game-winning field goal against the Colts. That's what I hope for. How dare you release a kicker, Indianapolis? How dare you? I'm all for the brand, but in all actuality, what this tells me is that the Colts, there's offensive concerns with this team aside from Jonathan Taylor that we need to have, and Frank Reich, you got to figure that out because, I mean, Dame kind of said with the Bengals, it's not going to get easier. There are some tough games for the Colts on the schedule, and the big thing within a couple weeks, I forget when their first time facing them is this season. They faced the Titans twice very early on in the season, so that's a big thing. Next game they have to go to is against Jacksonville, which we know they can't win in Jacksonville apparently to save their lives. And then week 3 is against the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is actually, it's going to be interesting because the Colts relatively play Kansas City good, actually. The last couple years, they've played them really well. I think they've even beaten them once within the last couple seasons too. So the Colts are a good team. They just didn't play like it at all, which is a disappointing thing because it's Jaguars next week, the Chiefs after, and actually the Titans in week 4. So some of your more important games are coming up here. This is not the way to start off the season. That's for sure.
Yeah, for me it was more concerning with the Colts because this game was close for way too long. The Texans clearly shouldn't be on the same level as the Colts are. I get it, it's an in division game, but when you improve your quarterback the way you did from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan, even though Carson Wentz did look really good this week, for the Commanders, clearly Matt Ryan's a pretty significant upgrade from him. And you still have Jonathan Taylor healthy, Michael Pittman. Added a couple of other pieces on that offense that made them better. Michael Pittman went off. He had like 8 catches for like 140 yards as well.
Yup.
So he looked like a true wide receiver one that's ready to take that next step. I know they were missing a couple pieces on that defense. I know Darius Leonard was out and another one of their linebackers was out, but they added Stephon Gilmore this offseason, so that should have helped the secondary. And overall, from offense to defense, the team just should have pretty much handled this game a lot better. Um, but they didn't for whatever reason. It's not like Jonathan Taylor struggled or something like that. Like clearly, this offense goes when Jonathan Taylor goes, but he still rushed for like 140 yards or something like that and had a touchdown. So, um, concerning to me with the Colts because I thought the Colts are going to be a team that could be sneaky and could beat any of these top teams in any playoff matchup because of their style of play with their defense and their running game. But I know it's bad to overreact after week one, but it's definitely a concerning game to me because good teams should be able to handle bad teams no matter what week it is, even if it's the beginning of the season. For the Texans though, I don't have much to say. I mean, like I said, this season is kind of for them to see what they have in Davis Mills. He didn't look great, he didn't look bad, but he obviously kept the game close with arguably the best team in that division. So that's a kind of a positive sign for them. They didn't really use their rookie running back that a lot of people praised this offseason, Damian Pierce. I know Lovie Smith came out and said they need to give him more work, so I expect that to happen because there are young and rebuilding teams, so they probably will be looking to give their young guys more work. Brandon Cooks look good. That defense obviously looked good outside of stopping the run. So overall, though, I think it's very concerning for the Colts because they should be able to handle these bad teams pretty easily.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, next notable game. Woo-hoo. Packers Vikings. 23 Vikings, 7 Packers. I said that so weird, but yeah, Vikings beat the Packers 23-7. Fellas, oof. Oof, oof, oof. Justin Jefferson generational. I think this Vikings team is gonna. I don't know about thrive because it is the Vikings and it's Kirk Cousins, but Kevin O'Connell, I think he's gonna do wonders for this offense and he's gonna do wonders for Jets. And game one was a pretty good start for that statement. But obviously, I'm gonna speak for all of us. It probably says more about the Packers. This result does. Yeah, this result says more about the Packers than it does the Vikings. But I'm gonna let you guys talk about that. The boy Jets. That boy is top 3 wide receiver right now. I'd say so. That's my opinion. But Dame, since we ended with you, let's start with you. Thoughts about the game? And I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna speak for you, but I'm assuming you think the result says more about the Packers. Go ahead.
I actually think it says more about the Vikings. The Vikings look
Ooh.
super impressive in this game. I know this was outlandish, but there was a few analysts, more than one, that I saw made like a bold take, like Kirk Cousins MVP this season, which is absolutely blasphemous. But he did look good. I give him his props. He did look good. I don't know how much that has to do with just Justin Jefferson just being amazing and just being that open. Like anybody can hit him if he gets that open. But that offense looked really, really good. Um, it's hard for me to give credit to that defense because I think the Packers' offense is that bad. From their wide receivers to their offensive line, I think it was really that bad. So I won't go that far and give the Vikings defense credit, but I was extremely impressed with the way their offense worked. They're running the ball well, and that opened up the play action. Their wide receivers getting open from Thielen to Jefferson to their tight ends. Kirk Cousins was extremely accurate. They didn't turn over the ball. They didn't put his defense in rough positions against a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who even when he doesn't have weapons, if the other team is turning over the ball and giving him great field position, he's going to make it happen. So yeah, I'm extremely impressed with the Vikings. As for the Packers, though, um, you could just look at one play, in my opinion, that will show you how this season's really going to go with these wide receivers, and it's the deep ball to Christian Watson that he just flat out dropped. And Rodgers put the ball in an absolute dime into Christian Watson's basket for a
Oh
walk-in
yeah.
touchdown for like 60 yards. Could have been his rookie's first touchdown, his first game. Just an absolute bomb and a dart from Aaron Rodgers, and he flat out drops it. Like he didn't get hit. Guy probably wasn't within 5 yards of him. It's not like he was even touched. He just flat out dropped it, and I just think that's how you're gonna see this Packers season go, at least for the first half of the season, because all these wide receivers are young, from Watson to Dobbs. Uh, Alan Lazard, I know, was hurt, and so I'm sure he's gonna be a big help because Aaron Rodgers is familiar with him, but he can't do all by himself. He's not Devontae Adams, so they're gonna need these young wide receivers to really step up. And seeing that big drop by Christian Watson, I'm sure doesn't make Aaron Rodgers very happy. So that's something to watch. But yeah, very impressed with the Vikings, and with the Packers, it's kind of what I expected. So that's why I don't have much to say about them.
Yeah, as someone who picked the Minnesota Vikings to win that first game, I wasn't
Nice.
surprised. um, it was first off, the last couple of years the Packers lose in the first game of the regular season, so I guess that's become a staple for them. Which I mean, I guess when I talked about rebound games, they get the Bears next week, so I mean, there you go, Green Bay. But
I don't know, Jurg. The Bears looking nice. 1-0.
if if there's not 20 inches of rain, then I'm fairly confident.
What would you do if the Bears beat the Packers?
I would lose my mind.
Okay.
And probably, well, I don't have any Green Bay Packers stock, so I can't say I'd sell it. But I think there'd be an issue. I'd call for the Packers to trade Aaron Rodgers. But I mean, hey, there's a nice quarterback in San Francisco that could be a trade chip for
Trey
49ers.
Lance. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, Jimmy G.
No, no.
No, I was trying to remember because I think the 49ers, like, they picked Mr. Irrelevant, but I forgot his name. I was going to make that joke. Anyways, irregardless. On both sides, like Dame said, what this said to me was like kind of what you guys said. The offense of what Kevin O'Connell can do, I think, was a big thing going into it. Dalvin Cook looked pretty good. Justin Jefferson was amazing. No other Vikings receiver had more than 40 receiving yards. So to me, that just what goes to show that Justin Jefferson is one of the special players in this league. Definitely a top 3 wide receiver right now. I don't think that's any stretch of the imagination. He's set up for a big season. And I think, unlike last season, I think he probably will get a chance to break the Minnesota Vikings single season receiving record this time, Dame. So there we go, another stick it to Mike Zimmer moment. But yeah, the Packers, like the defense had the wide receivers played better. I think the defense would have been fine. I think the defense for the Packers is fine, let's say. But like Dame said, it was just bad. I know we'll get to the game later, but Devontae Adams outgained the Packers wide receivers. Like that says all you need to know. Aaron Rodgers can't just be throwing to tight ends and running backs the whole time, especially with a crippled offensive line. Because again, Runyon, I think, was the guard who had to leave the game. They were already missing Jenkins going into this. David Bakhtiari, I don't know what the hell has happened to him ever since he got hurt. I think it was against the Rams back in the playoffs after the 2020 regular season. He's just like, I don't understand. Things are falling apart. Like, look, I think we all respect Aaron Rodgers' greatness on this podcast. I am one to stick up saying he's a top 5 quarterback of all time. I don't think it's a ridiculous thing to say. I can't think of a lot of quarterbacks that could deal with a team like this where everything is falling apart around him on the offensive side of things. Everyone's hurt, or everyone just can't catch a ball worth a damn. It's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. If there is a quarterback and coach combo that can maybe figure it out, I think it would be these two. The next couple of weeks are going to be very telling for the Green Bay Packers, to say the least. Dame said it best. Good teams beat bad teams. If the Packers don't beat the Bears next week, we may have to, start sounding some alarms in Green Bay. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers could drown his sorrow in the money he's making. I don't feel bad at all. Rest in piss, fucker. All right. I have 2 more notable games, but I'm just gonna breeze by the other results. Giants beat the Titans 21-20. Much
Glorious.
to the happiness of everyone on this podcast that the Titans lost. But shout out to the Giants, man. Saquon looks like the old Saquon. Granted, it is a game, but man, they did their thing. Brian Daboll proves to be a solid hiring. That going for that 2-point conversion, the ball's on that man, and it's working out. We all love Brian Daboll, and we thought he'd do wonders for the Giants. But shout out to that man. 1-0. No criticism here. We like to cut ass on Giants fans. It's fun to make jokes, but I mean, as Jets fans for two-thirds of this podcast, we can't really talk. But shout out to the Giants for being the Titans, doing the Lord's work. Yeah. Chiefs beat the Cardinals 44-21. Yeah, I think the Chiefs offense will be fine. They'll be just fine. I think tonight's game will be more telling on where the Chiefs stand without Tyreek Hill. But man, Cardinals, I mean, look, we know that the defense wasn't that great, but 44-21, and they play the Raiders next, and the Raiders are also losers. So one of those teams that are like playoff caliber teams is about to start off 0-2, and it'll likely be the Cardinals. Chiefs defense got better, but it's still not like absurdly great. I think we could all agree on that.
Yeah, yeah. There's still some things to work on. They're
Yeah.
starting a couple rookies. Trent McDuffie, actually, I think he's gonna miss tonight's
Yeah,
game
he
against
is.
the
He is.
Chargers.
He
So
is.
it's not good when your first round rookie corner already has to miss a little bit of time.
Yeah,
They're I mean, I kind of said it last week. I think like the Chiefs defense, it looked fine, but they might take a step back a little bit
probably.
because going to rely on a lot of young pieces here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're still fine if the offense can put up 40 points a game. That
Yeah.
defense, like, it'll be good.
But yeah, this is not looking too hot for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray already taking heat that there was an update in Call of Duty and already eating ass against the
Two two
Chiefs.
two K 2K coming out is about to come out. You got to give him time. He's
Yeah,
got to get
yeah,
his
yeah.
he's
Sure,
got to get
sure.
he's got to get his my player and his my team set
Of
up. I respect
course, bro. 230 million. You have to. But yeah. Chiefs, I think they'll be
Did you guys
fine.
see a stat that he's like 0-25 whenever Call of Duty has double XP weekend?
Yeah, bro, that was actually wild. I can't
That's
believe
nuts.
that's a fact. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm excited for the Chiefs though. I'm glad that I don't think we thought that they would take maybe a step back without Tyreek Hill, and obviously, but they seem to be fine. Mahomes looks to be fine. Yeah. Let's move on. Bucks Cowboys. I think we all expected the Bucks winning this one. I think Dame got the Cowboys winning for some stupid reason. I don't know why. Maybe try to appeal to our Cowboy fans of friends. There's one, but then there's another one that's looming in the shadows for some reason. No names, of course. But yeah, I think the notable news about this one is that Dak got hurt. He got surgery on his hand. I think it was his thumb specifically, but he'll be out for a bit. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna comment on the timetable because the reporting is just all over the place. It's like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, this and that. I don't know who's coming back from a hand surgery this soon. And you know what? I think the Cowboy season was clipped anyways, so I don't know if there's any reason to rush him back. Bucks. This is probably Brady's last season. To be honest, that defense, you know, holding the Cowboys to 3 points. I don't know when did that get hurt. Was the fourth quarter?
I thought it was the third.
Oh, I don't know, but still,
It was the second half for sure. I just don't remember.
Okay. Well, holding them to 3 points is still impressive. Julio Jones apparently still got it. Of course, everyone finds their juice when they team up with Tom Brady again. But whatever. Yeah, they're gonna be an NFC contender for sure.
Julio Jones just straight lying last season and playing like dog shit for the Titans on purpose. I
Always
love him even
happens,
more.
bro.
I love
Always
him even
happens.
more.
I love him. I just hate the fact that he went to Tampa Bay to team up with Brady. But again,
Well,
who
it's that
doesn't? Everyone does that.
Chris, all due respect, it's that or stay in Tennessee with the Titans. What would you rather do?
Or go to the Rams or the Chiefs.
I mean, but let's just say they didn't, look out for him. Would you rather want Ryan Tannehill or Tom Brady?
No. I mean, I don't blame him. You want to leave that cesspool of Tennessee, but still, I just wish you didn't go to Tom Brady. Tom Brady, just everyone loves him, bro. All right, yeah. So these are the last two I want to talk about before we get to our last segment. Before we get to our last segment, this one could be brief because I really want to talk about the Broncos Seahawks. Chargers beat the Raiders 24-19. I think we all had the Chargers winning, unless one of you guys had the Raiders. I don't remember, but I know 2/3 of us definitely had the Chargers winning. Justin Herbert, my God, what a magician. Derek Carr had an awful game. I think Devontae Adams is still Devontae Adams. They came back a little bit towards the end, but the Chargers secure the W. Again, I think the Raiders are in a tough spot right now. I think this was because they play the Cardinals next, right? And like I said, I think either one of those teams is going to go. Yeah, so one of those teams that could make that we both think could make the playoffs for their conference, but are not necessarily like we don't think they're going to be division winners, but definitely solidified wild card contenders. Both of them could start off 0-2. The Raiders going down 0-2 would be, I think, more effective for them, more of a worser impact for them. But this was, I think, the Chargers defense did its thing. I think Justin Herbert, again, tonight's going to be more of a telling for the Chargers and Justin Herbert because they go against the Chiefs and vice versa, of course. But this L for the Raiders, not good because if they go down 0-2 next, if they lose to the Cardinals and go down 0-2, then they're kind of fucked because that division, that AFC West, is nothing to play at. So, Jurg, let me start off with you. What did you make of this game, and what does this result say most about which team?
Well, it was a pretty close game, and I think the fact that it took 3 interceptions from Derek Carr, well, what it told me is that this Los Angeles Chargers defense, at its best, could be a top 5 defense in the league, to say the least. I think you have a defensive back crew of J.C. Jackson, Derwin James, and Asante Samuel Jr. That is just unadulterated talent right there.
Oh, by the way, there was some news that came out, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Jurg. I don't know how this works, but this is absurd what I read. J.C. Jackson underwent surgery because of
Yo, this is nuts.
an extra bone in his ankle when he was born.
What
He
the
he just went through surgery to get that extra bone removed. He was born with from the ankle, and he's a game time decision for tonight.
That's wild.
Why didn't he get this? Why did he get this now? How is he a game time decision? I don't even know. I have questions. Whatever. Go ahead.
Who knows? That's crazy to say the least. So when it comes to that game, like I said, it really just goes to show what that defense can do. Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa both showed up, especially Khalil Mack. It looked like a renaissance. He looked like you could say he looked like Raiders Khalil Mack in that game against the Raiders. Funny enough, but he was really at his peak there. Joey Bosa did well, of course. Like I said, the DB crew. The offense did good. I would expect a little bit more from them, but I think it's a given. Keenan Allen had to leave the game due to injury. We know he's going to be out tonight. Mike Williams didn't play his best. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, Justin Herbert is kind of used to throwing to third and fourth stringers. Remember his rookie season where he won Offensive Rookie of the Year? Yeah, he was mainly doing that throwing to the third and fourth stringers on that team. He was throwing it to essentially the three of us, and he still got 4,000 yards as a rookie. So I'm not extremely worried about it. What it told me about the Raiders, again, the defense didn't play too poorly. I think it was just a couple errors that cost them. But really what it came down to was the fact that McDaniels, like his offensive play calling needs to improve. Derek Carr, I have caped up for him on this podcast in the past. I do still think he's a pretty good quarterback, but Derek Carr is not going to win you a game. If it comes down to a throwing contest in the AFC West, Derek Carr and Russell Wilson are battling out for third and fourth. We know it's Mahomes and Herbert are the top two guys there. Like, that's not even a question. I think this game just goes to show that the Raiders offense needs, like I said, with, like the Bengals offensive line and a couple other like units with these teams, there needs to be chemistry, understanding, all that stuff. I think that's what Raiders need to get for them. I think that's what McDaniels needs to do. I also think he could have used the other weapons on the team a little bit better. Like Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, I think they could be used a lot better. I think Josh Jacobs could be used a lot better. I just think like this is McDaniels' first time being a coach again in a decade. Let's give him a couple weeks and let's see it. But I mean, like you said, Chris, I just saw the graphic. Last season, all the teams that started 0-2 in the regular season last year missed the playoffs. So this is a big week for a lot of teams that need to bounce back and are going to try to avoid falling down 0-2. And between the Raiders and the Cardinals, that's going to be a big game because, kind of like you said, especially for the Raiders, that is the division of death. And if you fall down 0-2 in that division, not the greatest thing in the world. Then again, never kind of helped you out there. But yeah, for Cardinals, I mean, death taxes and Cliff Kingsbury disappoints. What else can I say?
Could be on the hot seat after the season. Who knows?
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't have an issue with that at all.
Yeah. Dame?
Yeah, for me, the Chargers are extremely impressive. Obviously, they added J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack this offseason. I think their pass rush look phenomenal, and it's going to be a problem for all teams going forward. I'm excited to see how it's going to be tonight with going against Mahomes because the Chiefs' offensive line is definitely better than the Raiders, and I would even go out and say the Chiefs' offensive line is one of the best in the league. I know it's crazy to say when 2 years ago they looked like possibly the worst in the league in that Super Bowl against the Bucs. But adding Orlando Brown, Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, completely rebuilding that line is something to look forward to tonight. But for the Chargers, obviously, like I said, their edge rushers looks amazing. Justin Herbert looked great. Keenan Allen got hurt, of course, but you saw him throw to Gerald Everett, Palmer, guys like that. Mike Williams didn't get much work, but I'm sure that's going to change now with Keenan Allen out. The running game looked good. I know Austin Eckler didn't have one of those monster games, but that's coming. So the Chargers just from top to bottom look really good. I don't really have much to say other than that. As for Raiders, though, the defense, you just never really expected much from them, so I can't really say much there. But their offense is extremely concerning. After an offseason where you added Devontae Adams, like you should have, your offense was already pretty good last year. Like I'm not gonna say it was great; it's kind of middle of the pack. But when you add a guy like Devontae Adams, without really losing anything, you should kind of take that next step in that offense. But I think there were two Devontae Adams dependent this game. It seemed like almost every other play, Derek Carr was throwing it to him or targeting him, and that kind of makes you predictable as an offense. You can't really get your running game going. You can't get your other receivers going. You have guys like Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller on that offense that you need to get going as well. Devontae Adams will always get his no matter what. Like, he's just always going to be open, and he'll get his. But in order to have a efficient offense that keeps defenses on their toes and keeps them guessing, you need to be able to get everybody involved in that offense, from receivers to tight ends to running backs. And I don't think they did that this week. And I think that's something that's definitely going to need to change. It's kind of similar to the Rams. Like, they're kind of Cooper Cup dependent in that Thursday night game. And same thing with Devontae Adams. So I think they need to start with their running game. Josh Jacobs and Zamir White. They need to get that going, and from there you get your other receivers going. And then at the end of the day, Devontae Adams will be Devontae Adams. He'll get his 100 yards with like 7 catches and a touchdown. But if you target him 20 times a game, defenses will know, and then your other receivers won't be running their routes as hard. Defenses won't really need to guard them. They'll hone in on where you're going because you're gonna be too predictable. So I think the biggest takeaway for me from this game was the Raiders' offense and how it didn't look like they took the next step, which many expect them to do after adding a guy like Devontae Adams.
All right. Okay, this leads us to our last notable game that we're going to talk about. Obviously, we know which team this result says the most about. But I'm going to let Jurg take it from here, Dame, if you don't. You know what? No, since we ended with Dame, we're going to start off with Dame, and then we'll end with Jurg. So, Dame, Seahawks beat the Broncos 17-16, and Russell Wilson's much-awaited debut and his return to Seattle, where he got booed on. So, Dame, your thoughts on this game, and also, Jurg, I'm gonna take a gander here.
Hmm?
How about after you go, you segue into our main event segment, just because I have a feeling that your clown of the week will be someone from one person from these two teams. I won't say names to keep it a surprise, but how about you segue into our best performer of the year, best performer of the week, and clown of the week after you talk about the Broncos and Seahawks? Just because I have a feeling.
I got you. I got you.
Just
Very,
because I have a
very,
feeling.
very, very presumptive of you. But you're right.
Oh yeah. Okay. Beautiful. So Dame, thoughts on the game, and then Jurg, you take it from there.
I mean, it's absolutely embarrassing for the Broncos side. Just straight, first off, just off their play, not being able to stop Geno Smith on the defensive end, and Russell Wilson just not being able to march up and down the field with the kind of offense that he has against that Seattle defense, who lost their arguably their best player on defense in Jamal Adams, who's not even that good, but that just shows you how bad that Seattle defense is. That Jamal Adams is their best player, and he was out for the game. So the fact that Russell Wilson with Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, Cortland Sutton, Albert O, Jared Judy, KJ Hamler wasn't able to march up and down this the field on this defense is extremely concerning to me. You just paid this guy $250 million for what? Their defense wasn't able to stop Geno Smith. Like I said, weren't able to stop the run. Geno Smith was making big throw after big throw. This Broncos defense is pretty good. You have Bradley Chubb, you have Patrick Surtain, you have Justin Simmons in the secondary as well. You have guys on every single level that gives them a solid defense and that should be able to stop guys like Geno Smith at the quarterback position, but they weren't able to do that. And then just the end of the game, let's not even get started on that. Where you have 50 seconds left, you don't call a timeout, you let it wind all the way down for you to not give the guy you just paid $250 million to and trade 3 first-round picks for to get you 5 yards. That's extremely concerning to me as an organization where they are. The head coach, I forgot his name, but I just know he came from Green Bay. That was really bad. You usually, even if you have a decent quarterback, a guy that you're not paying $250 million for, going for a 4th and 5 should be the easy decision there instead of kicking a 64-yard field goal, which would be the second longest, I think, in history. If it wasn't for Justin Tucker last year, it would be the record. Even with a simple mid-level kind of QB, you still go for it. That's the decision. But especially when you have a guy you just traded 3 first-round picks for, a star quarterback who's won a Super Bowl before, if you don't trust him and get you 5 yards, then why'd you even bring him in here? Why'd you give him all that money? Why'd you give up all those assets? It's not like he's out there doing by himself where he kind of offensive line's bad, no running game, no receivers. Like, he has 2 star receivers in Judy and Sutton. He has Albert O, who had a pretty solid game, and on that specific drive, he caught a couple crucial catches as well. And you still have Javonte Adams, so you could dump it off for 5 yards. The guy had 10 catches for like 80 yards. Like, you could easily dump it off to him for 5 yards. All you needed to do is get 5 yards, and you still had a timeout that you could have called right after you got the first down, that you then could have kicked a much easier field goal. So I think just as an organization, it's extremely concerning to me what the Broncos think of Russell Wilson and how much they don't trust him.
boys, that game was it was poetic.
It was a good game.
I thought, oh, we're being nice with good game. I thought that, really at the end, I understood what it was like way back in history when Beethoven made his works of art. I understood what it was like when Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel and the awe that those people had of something they had never thought they would see. And we got the same kind of feeling in this game, but not because of excellence, because of pure and utter incompetence. I'll get to that momentarily. Let me set the stage for the game first. Like you guys said, first game of the Denver Broncos season, first game of Russell Wilson as a Denver Bronco. Just got paid a nice contract, which is he got paid. He got paid good money, to say the least. Boys, what, $230 million? That's not bad.
You
That's
bought
not
the
bad.
most expensive home in the history of Denver, was it?
Yeah, which really
Or
just
Colorado?
really just goes to show how much of a stuck-up scumbag he is. But
Damn. All right.
regardless, my opinions have been said about Russell Wilson before, and they ain't changing here. It really, you had the situation and the Seattle fans booing Russell Wilson, the man who was what a
Yeah, what'd you
second.
make of that, Jurg? What'd you make of that? Did you
Oh,
expect it? Did you expect it?
oh yes, I 100% expected it, and therefore, and it was also like people that were like, "How dare they boo him? He brought a super. He didn't bring Jack anything. He was the quarterback by chance when he was there. I could put Matt Flynn on that Super Bowl winning team, and they would have won the Super Bowl with that defense. Don't give me that BS. He was not the Russell Wilson we saw later in his career when he became a guy that everyone was saying, let Russ cook, and that he should have gotten MVP votes and this and that. No. He wasn't that guy yet. He was a second-year quarterback who, on a playoff run, it was Richard Sherman's tip in the NFC Championship game, or it was tipped to him, whatever the case was, that beat the San Francisco 49ers, who were the defending NFC champions. And it was that Legion of Boom defense that brought them back. And it was a stupid decision on the goal line that cost them that dynasty. And that stupid decision, by the way, was letting him throw the football. So don't give me that he brought the Super Bowl. No, Legion of Boom brought the Super Bowl to Seattle. And you saw how hyped up everyone around the Seattle environment was. Bro, when it's one thing because there was the tensions, right? In all seriousness here, let me take a step back. It's one thing where, and we know the stories as NFL fans, boys, that people in that locker room, especially the defense, were not happy that management was very much favoring Russell Wilson. To this day, there are guys on that team that believe that the decision to have Russell throw it on the 1 yard line was done because management and the staff and whatever wanted Russell Wilson to get the glory of being a back-to-back Super Bowl champion and not just give it to Marshawn Lynch. Right? Like that's a legitimate belief by the guys that were there. The guys were so happy to beat Russell Wilson and win that game. The Legion of Boom was smiling that night. I think even Doug Baldwin made a comment about Russell Wilson. I don't know if it was direct or if it was kind of like a subtle thing. Guys do not like him. They don't like him. And even the guys that were barely with him for a year, 2 or 3, that, like, you could tell that was a personal game for Seattle as a whole to go at this guy who the past players feel cost them a chance at a dynasty, or at least the obsession with the organization for him cost them a chance at a dynasty. And then a guy who, let's be real here, this isn't like a lot of situations. He straight up like told management like, "Yo, I want out." And for the organization that put a lot of faith in him, gave a lot of their focus on him, wanted to make him the guy. Yes, I know you can, and I'm also in the argument, yes, they failed him offensive line-wise the last couple of years, but for him to kind of just, like, it really seemed like he tried to bury Seattle on the way out to me, or at least give subtle shots. I wasn't a fan of that, and I was not surprised that Seattle Seahawks fans booed him. This is also the sports fan in general, boys. Like, they were going to boo him. He does not have the gravitas in that city that most would have expected, because I think a lot of people are starting to see behind the veil of the corporate shill that is Russell Wilson. So I was a big fan of it, to say the very least. I normally am kind of like, when it comes to guys returning and getting booed, if it's not deserved. No, that was very much well deserved. So I was very much cool with it. Props to Seattle Seahawks fans. Getting to the game itself, like you guys said, it was a close game. Seattle had the lead early, and they, relatively speaking, kind of kept the lead for the most part. It was pretty wild to see that Geno Smith was legitimately like, this is the best he ever looked since college. That is not, hyperbole. I have 2 Jets fans that can confirm it.
Jets legend Geno Smith.
Jets legend Geno Smith, who played the best game he ever played since college.
And good for him, man. I'm really happy for him.
Trust me, I'll get to Geno Smith here in a little bit, Chris. Don't you worry. But yeah, the Seahawks, they took the lead. They were up 10-3. Then Denver tied it. And then they took a 17-10 lead. And then a field goal at the end of the third, 17-13. The end of the game, to me, is where, like, Dame kind of set it up. There is not enough justice on what the final drive was. When they got the football, there was still like 4.5 minutes or so left on the clock, or 4 minutes. In the first minute plus that they had the ball, they got like 11 yards. They barely got that. In the full 3+ minutes, they moved the ball like only 30 yards down the field. How the hell, with Russell Wilson, with Jerry Jeudy, who had 100 yards on the day, by the way, with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, who combined for over 100 rushing yards at the end of the day, with Cortland Sutton, a former Pro Bowl receiver, who 4 for 72 on the day, do you not get more yards there? And then the end of that game said everything. Complete miscommunication, malfunction at the junction, whatever you want to call it. They were not, between Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett, and what a hack of a head coach he is, apparently, they were not in sync on what to do at the end of that game, and the terrible decisions they made to call a timeout, trying to get the defense to go offsides. Like you said, Dame, at the end of the day, Russell Wilson can get you 5 yards. I'll be real here. I know I've been tough on him. Russell Wilson can get you 5 yards to any of the skill position pieces. How did you, who was the offensive coordinator for Aaron Rodgers for the last 2 seasons, who Aaron Rodgers by chance won back-to-back MVPs, clearly not because of you. I don't think anyone ever gave Nathaniel Hackett the credit, but clearly not because of you. You don't have a play? You don't have a single play to get you 5 yards in this day and age as a allegedly offensively touted coach. You kick a field goal 64 yards. By the way, I think to this point, McManus has still never kicked a field goal above 59 yards or whatever. So I don't even think he ever hit a 60-yard field goal up to this point. Absolute insanity. Just the worst possible way for that game to go for Denver. People, like, even myself included, boys, like, I'm not a gambler, but for a gambling perspective, the line going into that game was like Denver was favored by, like, I think 6.5 at least, if not a full touchdown. And I was telling, like, a friend of mine the night before that game, or like the hours before, like, oh yeah, if I was a gambler, I'd probably go over on this because there's no way Denver shouldn't win this game by a lot. But lo and behold, when it comes to Mr. Unlimited and Nathaniel Hackett, having to lead the way and having to lead to a big time victory, of course you didn't get that, and I'm not surprised at all. And the way it was handled and the way that they've responded since, to me, is not great. Nathaniel Hackett kind of had the press conference, and to me, he wasn't defensive. I'll give him credit, but he just kind of like, I didn't like. He kind of like brushed it off, like, oh yeah, hindsight 2020 will learn. And I'm just like, no, dude, I don't care if that was your first game as a head coach. You don't make that mistake. You don't. And it said to me that there is a reason I think me and Dame had the Broncos being the 4th team in this division going into the season. I think it's only further. I know the Raiders lost week 1, but I can take positives out of the Raiders week 1. I can't take positives out of Denver's week 1. I just can't. So that to me summarizes it. Big loss right here for Denver against Seattle. Even just not including the story aspect of it. It was a disappointment to say the very least. A team favored to win, a team that some people were trying to pick, to do well in this division, make the playoffs, etc. Complete choke job. Complete. It feels weird to say that about a team that never held the lead at some point. The Atlanta Falcons, we could say that about them. The Houston Texans, they blew their lead. They just didn't lose the game. The Steelers nearly blew a lead, but they didn't lose the game. Denver, you're the rare team that didn't have the lead, and we can say you choked that game. That's an interesting echelon of teams that you're in that conversation with for that Broncos. So there's that. But somewhat sports nation, let's ride to the next segment, and let's go to the best news segment of this podcast. The brainchild of my 2 compatriots here. We are going to give you guys on a weekly basis throughout this NFL season our crown to our best performer from the week, in our opinion. Whether it be best performer, most unexpected performer, etc. There's different criteria. We could go on a week-by-week basis here, boys. Or our clown of the week. I know we talk about clown shoes, but it's crown versus clown.
Yep.
who did the best versus who was an absolute buffoon, who was an absolute stooge, etc., etc. And I have a great honor of presenting my first clown of the week here, and crown, but I'm going with the clown first because I literally just talked about it. But my first clown of the week here, boys, it's got to be overall the Denver Broncos, but more specifically Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson. I mean, my
You gonna give it to
God.
both of them? One
Yes,
shoe each?
because here's why. Listen, boys, here's why. I know the end of game is squarely on Nathaniel Hackett, but if you look at that game, Russell Wilson, for all the let Russ cook propaganda that he has had his little social media team and fans, those sycophants spread over the last couple of years, it is the biggest, it is the funniest thing in the world where so many times he looked lost. He looked to the sideline like every single play almost to try to get the call. You're the guy, you're the MFer that said let Russ cook, and you had to look to the sideline every single play. Jared Goff doesn't look to the sideline that much in Detroit or even when he was in LA. And Sean McVay basically made that dude. So for the end of the game, clown, Nathaniel Hackett. For the entire rest of the game, clown, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is, I hope he sends Nathaniel Hackett flowers and a nice fruit basket. Because if it wasn't for that botch at the end of the game by Hackett, we it buried the headline of Russell Wilson completely underperformed against the Denver Broncos. He should have against Seattle Seahawks. Excuse me. He should have played a lot better in that game. That goes without question. Like that was a disappointment of a game. They both get a clown shoe. Give them both a big red nose and all that. You know, have Russell Wilson wear the sad. Actually, no. I'll be fair. Let Nathaniel Hackett wear the sad clown makeup, and then Russell Wilson trying to be funny squirts the water into him because it was that bad. It was just terrible. Do I go to my crown or do I give you?
Yeah, go ahead, Jurg. You go ahead. Go ahead.
So originally, boys, I had a different crown of the week winner here, but just to stick with it, and I'm all for the shits and giggles and the memes here. My crown of the week goes to Geno Smith, bro. I'm so happy.
Let's
for him.
go.
Who knew? Who would have thought that the Seattle Seahawks conversation, guys? We were talking about the fact that Seattle looking forward to that top pick, a quarterback this year. Who knew they had the next franchise quarterback sitting behind the old one this entire time, the last season and a half or two? Good for Geno Smith having the game that he had against Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos team that, like Dame said, is a pretty good defense. 23 of 28, 195 yards, 2 touchdowns. Is it spectacular? No. Is it all world? No. Am I ever going to pick Geno Smith for this award again this season? No. But for 1 week, this is the thing here, guys. For 1 week, Geno Smith deserves these flowers. Like he did. You talk about the Giants doing God's work, Chris, and I will say my original winner. I'm not going to say my original winner. But I will say this. You don't want to talk about God's work, Chris. God's work was what Geno Smith did for us because he didn't he complete his first 15 or 16 passes too?
I think he might have.
That's the best game that Geno Smith has played since college. Like I'm you know what? I'm a Geno Smith guy officially. I mean I was actually a Geno Smith fan when he came out of college, but I'm a Geno Smith guy here. He did the Lord's work. Just French kiss with that game. They're just absolutely spectacular. Love you, Geno Smith. Russell Wilson can
Kick rocks.
Yeah, he could kick rocks. He could.
He could do more than that, but he could kick rocks.
He could kick rocks mainly, and he could keep crying about Future being a bully to him on social media too. For all I care, I really don't care. I'm all for Seattle this week. Let's go Seattle Legion of Boom LOB 12th man. Let's ride.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna go next. Hard to top off Jurg's picks, but we're gonna
save me for last.
Yeah. So my crown of the week goes to Justin Jefferson. 2 touchdowns, 184 yards. This man is a solidified top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. He just eviscerated the Packers, and he's just so much fun to watch. Man, fantasy owners, look, I'm someone who convinced my boy who picked ahead of me in fantasy to please take Jets so I could take Cup. And, I'm not going to write Cup off yet. I'm not a victim of recency bias. But, man, Jets is looking – he's looking nice. He's looking nice, and he's the primary reason why Kirk Cousins looks like a pretty decent quarterback in the NFL. And he's probably the main reason why I have the Vikings going to the playoffs this year. Neither here nor there. My clown of the week, the one who gets the clown shoes, played in the exact same game. I'm going Aaron Rodgers just because it's fun to poke fun at this piece of shit. 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, 195 yards, 22 for 34. Look, I know we a lot of the blame has to go to the wide receivers, but Aaron Rodgers, for as good as he is, didn't do his best to make a lot work. Quarterback rating, Jurg, ready for this? 16.1. 16.1. So Yeah, I know most of it wasn't his fault, but he asked for this. He brought this upon himself when he re-signed with Green Bay, and I feel zero sympathy for him. But he's gonna go on Joe Rogan and then take more shrooms during games, so it's all good. But stay losing to the Vikings. Top five quarterback, Jurg. I'm not the one to dispute that claim, but if you're in that echelon, you got to do better. So my clown of the week, Aaron Rodgers. You might win more of these, but two clown shoes. Dame, go ahead.
Yeah, so going with the clown, or you want me to do both?
Do both. Do.
Both? All right. So with clown is actually not a player. It's actually a coach, and I'm gonna go with Robert Saleh. The reason he is the clown of the week is because of his comments post game that I am sick and tired of. Because I see this every time the Yankees go through a bad streak or Aaron Boone. Sick and tired of these stupid post game press conferences with their quotes. Robert Saleh came out and said that the Ravens did not beat them, that the Jets beat themselves. And he said this confidently with Joe Flacco as his quarterback and having like 150 yards and maybe getting one touchdown the entire game, and it was in garbage time at the end. With their defense giving up bombs to Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay, not Devontae Adams or Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson. It was Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay, with Lamar Jackson throwing them the ball, not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. So he said that the Ravens did not beat them, that they beat themselves, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then the next day he came out and made another stupid quote saying that he's keeping all the receipts of the people that are talking bad about the Jets.
Everyone's talking about the Jets.
First of all, everyone is. So I don't know how long these receipts are, but they have no reason to not to because they've been so bad for such a long time. And then the worst part is that even when they do, he said when they do turn around, he's gonna like give out the receipts. First of all, when they do turn around, he's not even gonna be here because he's not the coach that's gonna take the team to the promised land if they even do ever get there. So he won't even have the chance to give out those receipts because there'll be another head coach in his position that should be there because he's just not doing a good job and he shouldn't be there for very much longer after the season. So that's why he'd be my clown because of these clown comments post game and the fact that he said he's going to give out those receipts when he's not even going to be there in the future. Now, for more positive news, with the performance of the week, I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes.
Nice.
I know it's kind of easy, but just going off the fact that this offseason, all he did was listen to how he's not the best quarterback in the division. He's not the best quarterback in the league because Josh Allen, although Mahomes beat Josh Allen in the AFC Championship and Josh Allen has never beat Mahomes, somehow Josh Allen is better. And then he's not even the best quarterback in his division because Justin Herbert has already overtaken him, even though he can't beat the Houston Texans and Las Vegas Raiders to go into the playoffs, even though Patrick Mahomes in his first 4 years as a starter has been to the AFC Championship all 4 times and been to the Super Bowl twice and won one of them and won an MVP and threw for 50 touchdowns in the season.
Hot.
And in his worst season last year, he still had a better season than Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. So Patrick Mahomes had to listen to this all offseason and not be able to do anything about it because obviously he lost in the AFC Championship. Oh, yeah, Joe Burrow also somehow, some way better than him too. And we saw what Joe Burrow did week 1. But then you have Patrick Mahomes who goes on the road in Arizona without Tyreek Hill because everyone's thought, oh, Patrick Mahomes is only good because of Tyreek Hill. Oh, he only throws the ball 5 yards and Tyreek Hill goes 85, so it juices the numbers. Patrick Mahomes goes out on the road in Arizona without Tyreek Hill with Juju Smith-Schuster as his number 1 receiver. Goes out 350 yards, 5 touchdowns, absolutely blows out the Arizona Cardinals with no way he made it look hard. He made it look so easy and just shut up all the haters. I saw nobody say anything bad about Patrick Mahomes. I saw nobody argue that Justin Herbert or Josh Allen are better than him and that Mahomes is on the decline or something like that, or that he needs Tyreek Hill. So, based off everything that I hear this offseason and the fact that he came out with a statement in week 1, I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes as my performer of the week.
Not a bad pick at all, Dame. And we're all Patrick Mahomes fans here, and we do not tolerate the Patrick Mahomes disrespect. I know we know a lot of people that are in the Josh Allen bandwagon. And you know what? That's no disrespect to Josh Allen, but Patrick Mahomes still wears the crown. Let's not get it twisted. I fully agree with Damien's comments. I'm sure Jurg does. And yeah, look, this episode's way too long anyway, so we're gonna wrap it up here. Fellas, amazing job as always. I like doing these type of recap episodes. NHL's back, so Jurg's gonna do his thing as well. I think we're gonna have more MLB dominated episodes in the future because the season's winding down to an end. Playoffs are right around the corner. Some teams have been eliminated. Some teams have clinched divisions, but there's still a lot of ground to cover up from other teams. Jurg, where can they find us on the socials?
Well, guys, you already know, if you want to hear the upcoming episodes with all this fun stuff, then you got to make sure you keep track with us at the Somewhat Sports Podcast. It is somewhat.sports on Instagram, where you guys could see the predictions that we make on a weekly basis. Week 2, it's going to be past to listening to this, but our Week 2 predictions have been posted already. Just 4 games of differences between us. It's going to be interesting, to say the least, how everything plays out this week in that end, guys. And aside from that, if you want to listen to the podcast, of course, it's Somewhat Spaced in Sports on both YouTube and Spotify. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube, 5 stars, and give us a follow. Download some episodes over on Spotify. It's just, this is the premier podcast going. We talk baseball, we talk hockey, we talk football, we talk everything. Because here at the Somewhat Sports Podcast, despite the title of the name, because the name is just catchy as hell, we are all sports all the time. The best sports podcast going out there. Join the wave, boys. And once again, Somewhat Sports Nation, let's ride.
Oh man, for someone who hates Russell Wilson, we do use his catchphrase a lot. It's so cringe, but it's so funny to use. I'm not gonna lie.
That's what sardonic humor is for. It's to make fun of him.
Honestly, it's one of the best phrases ever. But anyway, yeah, neither here nor there. So gentlemen, amazing job as always. To all the listeners listening, if you made it this far, and it's a long episode, so we appreciate you. Until next time, peace.
Peace.